Kalila Reynolds, and welcome to another edition of Taking Stock Live. We're bringing you all the latest business news and telling you how it will affect you and your money. Now, don't forget to head over to my website, KalilaReynolds.com/newsletter once this live has ended to get my newsletter straight to your inbox twice a week. And let me know in the chat, where is everyone joining us from tonight, to let me know what part of the country, what part of the world are you watching from. And of course, hit that like button and share this video with a friend. Now, here's what's coming up on tonight's show, followed by What's Hot in Business. Now, come on, let's get this money.
With interest rates rising rapidly, another food shortage warning, a looming U.S. recession, and a fifth wave of COVID-19 in Jamaica, what's Jamaica's outlook for the future? And is the BOJ making the right decision to raise interest rates yet again? Bank of Jamaica Governor Richard Byles will face your tough questions. And the analysts weigh in on the latest market developments. The Dollar Financial IPO made junior market history on Friday. What impact do rising interest rates have on the Jamaica stock market? And over in the US, Twitter shareholders are suing Elon Musk and Twitter itself. We'll discuss.
But first, here's What's Hot, brought to you by Jamaica Money Market Brokers, your best interest at heart.
Dollar Financial Services made history on the Jamaica Stock Exchange Friday after receiving a reported $5 billion in subscriptions from its initial public offer within a few hours of opening. According to company representatives, the Dollar IPO was the largest raise in the history of the JSE's junior market. Dollar was only seeking 500 million Jamaican dollars, which is roughly 3.2 million US dollars, the maximum allowed under junior market rules. By KRM calculations, this means investors will receive an average of 10% of the shares they applied for. According to the prospectus, investors should expect to see the basis of allotment within 6 business days from the closing, which would be around June 7. In a statement on Friday, Dollar's board said that they were humbled by the overwhelming support and the strong show of confidence from the market. Speaking on last week's episode of Taking Stock, Dollar's CEO Kadeen Mayer said that the company will dedicate $250 million from the IPO proceeds towards expanding their footprint across the Caribbean. The company currently has 7 branches in Jamaica and 1 in Guyana. JPS has applied for a nearly 2% increase in your light bills. According to the Office of Utilities Regulation, JPS has submitted its annual tariff adjustment application along with a request for a rate review. The OUR explained that the tariff adjustment application allows JPS to realign its revenue targets against inflation and exchange rate movements, as well as its performance in the previous year. The company is also allowed to ask for a rate review in the event of an exceptional circumstance that is considered to have a significant impact on the electricity sector. The OUR said it will receive the submissions and will announce its decision by August. NCB is warning its customers to be extra vigilant after reporting that at least $22 million has been defrauded from NCB customers in smishing attacks since the start of the year. Smishing is a scam which sees fraudulent text messages being sent to trick people into handing over confidential information about their bank accounts. According to NCB, over $17 million was stolen from customers over the course of 8 days. Special Investigations Manager at the bank, Dane Nicholson, told the Jamaica Observer that they have been working with the police and one person has already been arrested. NCB stressed that it has a no-click, no-link policy, which means that it will never send an email or an SMS message asking customers to click on any link to take certain actions. Jamaican investors will soon have access to Trinidad and Tobago mutual funds through a partnership between GK Capital Management and the Trinidad and Tobago Unit Trust Corporation. The deal, which is still subject to regulatory approvals, would allow GK and TTUTC to partner in the distribution of mutual funds in Jamaica. TTUTC is the largest operator and manager of mutual funds in the Caribbean. It currently manages $3.7 billion for over 625,000 investors. GK Group CEO Don Webby said the move is part of its financial inclusion strategy for the country. The company noted that the initial funds will diversify investment opportunities for GK Capital's clients and expand its product reach. What's Hot was brought to you by Jamaica Money Market Brokers, your best interest at heart.
This segment of Taking Stock is brought to you by Bulwark Insurance Agency, insurance made easy, and
Download today. Register using your existing NCB online banking login credentials. To open an account or get more info, contact
Yes, welcome back to Taking Stock. Let me shout out everyone in the comments so far. Kish Lindsay says hello. David is joining us from Montego Bay. Ingle Johnson says good night, everyone. Joel is in Kingston. Carlson says first time in the chat, checking in from Over River. Colette says Kingston checking in. Another person, A. Cole, is checking in from Kingston. Lavar, as usual, checking in from Mandeville. Javon says, dollar IPO missed me. How could you make that happen to you, Javon? You're not paying attention. I bet you're not on the newsletter. Dollar IPO missed me, but here anticipating the next IPO, like Scooby-Doo, estimating his next big ghost bust. Danville says, NC State checking in. That North Carolina State checking in. Keisha is in Mandeville. Denver is all the way in the Bahamas. He says, Bahamas in the house. So big up to everyone all around the country, all around the world joining us for this evening's program. And it is a very interesting one because a lot is going on in the economy right now. There's a food shortage warning. Gas prices are sky high. There's a looming US recession, which is bound to affect our tourism industry and exports. And on top of that, we have a fifth. But amid all of this, the Bank of Jamaica believes that now is the time to continue raising interest rates. So yeah, it's getting more expensive to buy a house, to buy a car, to expand your business, or to take any type of loan. So of course, we had to invite Bank of Jamaica Governor Richard Byles back to the show. He will be taking your questions as well as my questions, so feel free to type them in the chat. Welcome, Governor.
Hello, Kalila. How are you?
I am good. It's great to have you back on. I always enjoy your company when you join us on the program.
Good to be with you this evening.
All right. So we, of course, have to start with the elephant in the room, which is the BOJ's policy interest rate that has gone up to 5% per annum. The previous one was 4.5%, but there have been several interest rate hikes over the past few months. So we were starting at 0.5%, historic low, just a few months ago. And from that, now we've gone all the way up to 5% in a very short space of time. So for those who have not been following this conversation, I think most of my viewers have been, explain what is the rationale for raising interest rates. Just set the scene for us.
Well, it's one of our several tools that we use to try to manage inflation in whatever way is possible here in Jamaica. A lot of our inflation is imported, that is so for sure. But even for commodities that are imported, our exchange rate has a big impact on the final price. So what happens with that exchange rate is important in trying to manage inflation. When we raise our policy rate, what it does is it makes Jamaican dollar deposits, whether it's a repo or it's a CD, it makes them more attractive versus a US dollar deposit or CD. And what that does is restrain the appetite of people to take Jamaican dollars, buy US dollars, and then invest. So it takes a little pressure off of the exchange rate and off of the market. If you notice that in the last 7 months, I could go as far back as 10 months, the exchange rate has been pretty stable. Now, can you imagine what inflation would be like if that exchange rate had not been stable? Remember, we are in a pandemic or just emerging from one or trying to emerge from the pandemic. And the economy has not been as fit and robust as it was before. But still, the exchange rate has held for the last 7 to 10 months. So an important part of that exchange rate being stable is that Jamaican interest rates are more attractive than they were before. Today, you can deposit, you can get a repo or a CD for 7% maybe, depending on how much money you have and how long you want to place it off. And a US equivalent would be like about 3%. So that 4% difference in an environment where the exchange rate is fairly stable makes a Jamaican dollar investment more attractive than it was before.
All right,
That's
so that's a very important point. Before we continue, let me just ask you to lower your camera a little bit. I think you're on a laptop, so you could just tilt it forward just a little. Yes. All right, perfect. So yes,
great.
that was a very important point that you raised just now, that over the past several months, the exchange rate has indeed been fairly stable despite all the changes that have been going on in the economy. And that is to your credit, because if the exchange rate had gone to 160 and 170 and beyond, you would be in for immense criticism right now. So
Correct.
that is to your credit, and I'm gonna give you credit for that. But on the issue of of interest rates now, the premise has been that raising interest rates, as you have explained, will dampen inflation. So we have this high inflation right now, and you at the BOJ are of the belief that that raising interest rates will dampen inflation. You've been pursuing this policy of raising interest rates for, what is it, like 9 months now since you started raising the rates?
About that, yes, from October of last year.
So have you seen any evidence in the economy that this policy is working? Because I still see inflation going up.
Yeah, well, as I said before, a big part of our inflation is imported, international commodities over which nobody in Jamaica has any control. However, if you are a businessman and you are trying to price the goods that you have just bought, let's say at 155, and you think that the exchange rate is going to be 160 in 30 days' time, you're going to price your goods at 160, not the 155. And so a stable exchange rate is really important in trying to hold down the lid on inflation. And that is why we put so much emphasis on keeping that exchange rate as stable as possible.
But you always tell us not to focus on the exchange rate because the exchange rate will fluctuate, it will go up and down. You always tell us that we should focus on inflation instead. And now that inflation is high, you're telling us to look at the exchange rate because you've kept it stable.
Well, the exchange rate does go up and down, but it has not gone way, it's not volatile. It's not up at 160 and down back at 151. It's been pretty stable at about 154 to 156. And that's a reasonable bit of stability. And
yeah,
I think
my point is that because it's good now, you're telling us, oh, don't look over here at exchange rate, when normally you're telling us, don't look at the exchange rate. I find that interesting.
No, I mean, the exchange rate is always important. But in the current environment where we are trying to manage inflation and where the exchange rate has a profound effect on inflation, we have to put some extra emphasis on it. And that's what we do.
Okay. All right. I was listening to a radio interview recently with Dr. Adrian Stokes, Vice President of the PSOJ, that's the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica. And he was making the point that you actually, let me find exactly what he said here. Let me look at my notes. All right. So he was saying that the BOJ's interventions will only have an effect on inflation if you raise those interest rates to what he described as punitive levels. And this goes back to the question I was asking you earlier. Have you seen any evidence that the policy is actually working? And when do you expect it to start working? At what point?
But Kalila, that's what I'm saying to you, that part of the policy working is to help to keep the exchange rate stable. And I explained the relationship between exchange rate and the rate that you get on your deposit. So that's a profound component of trying to keep inflation in check. The impact of interest rates on exchange rate. And every businessman, I can promise you, will tell you that they are happy that the exchange rate has been as stable as it has been.
But at what point will it have an effect on inflation?
But it is having an effect on inflation.
Through the exchange rate,
If you had
okay.
an exchange rate of 170, what do you think inflation would be? You think it would be 11.8? It would be like 15, 18.
You have indicated as well in your last press conference, last week it was, that you're not done with raising interest rates. How far do you expect it to go?
Well, what I did say in my last press briefing also is that we were near to what we call a neutral rate. And a neutral rate is really the rate at which we are neither accommodative, that is encouraging growth and investment, or compressive, trying to restrain growth. And I said that we were pretty close to that rate. And that's an important point of departure for us. So interpret that how you wish. We always look on the incoming data to see, is it according to what we expected? Is it worse? Is it better? And we adjust our assessment based on that. But we're coming from 0.5, which was very accommodative, Kalila. And let me say, maybe that is part of the concern that people have, that we have had to come all the way from 0.5 to 5%. But that 0.5 was really very, very accommodative. You know, say we were coming from 4 to 5. I don't think you would feel or hear everybody or so many businessmen saying what they're saying. They'd say, oh, well, BOJ moved 1%, that's not so bad. But we had to come all the way from 0.5. And why were we at 0.5? Because we were seeking to encourage and stimulate growth.
So there's been a lot of debate about this, which is why I'm approaching it from the angle that I am governor. There was a tweet from Executive Director of the Caribbean Policy Research Institute, CAPRI, Dr. Damien King, who is very active on Twitter last week. And this was in response to you saying during the press conference that you don't believe that Jamaica is in imminent danger of a recession, something to that effect. So here was Dr. King's tweet. With the underlying Bank of Jamaica interest rate up by 4.5 percentage points in 9 months, a global recession likely, commodity prices high, and supply chain bottlenecks continuing, the suggesting that there is no risk of recession for the local economy seems unsupported. So this is Damien King weighing in on this suggestion that, you know, even though the U.S. economists are saying the United States are likely to have a recession soon, that's not going to be the case for Jamaica. So what's your response to Dr. King?
We don't disagree. Indeed, in my policy statement last week, I did say that the risk was to the downside. In other words, the chances of growth slowing and international situation becoming a recession is more than, you know, things picking up and looking better. And it's something that we watch very carefully, not just monthly, but weekly. And you know, it's something that you just have to pay attention to all the time. We don't have control over it, but we have to be eagle-eyed in assessing it by the week.
Interesting. So, all right. So there would be an impact naturally because,
Sure.
you know, common saying United States sneeze, Jamaica catches a cold. We have our tourism industry. Major source of tourists is from the United States. So if they have a recession and their tourists or people who might have taken a vacation in Jamaica might not have that money anymore, of course, there's going to be an impact. But what you're saying is that there's not likely to be an actual recession in Jamaica, although there will be an impact.
No. Let's put it in context. What I said was that when we look at the current statistics of Jamaica, some of the crucial signals, we don't see a recession on the headline right now. We're seeing our unemployment rate at the lowest it has ever been. We're seeing GDP growth in the quarter ended December last year being even stronger than the quarter ended September of last year. We still believe that we're going to grow by 7 to 10% for the financial year ending March of this year. We still believe we have a good shot at growing 2 to 4% in the next financial year. We believe that in June of this year, Jamalco will reopen the alumina plant, and that will put a lot more, will take up a lot of unused capacity in the economy. Tourism at 70% of its pre-pandemic still has a way to go, and we believe that that will contribute to the economy also. Remittances remain over 40% ahead of where they were pre-pandemic. And what that does is put more purchasing power in the hands of the ordinary Jamaican than would normally be the case. So, I mean, we have to read the signals as they come to us, the real life signals. And these signals are not negative. They are generally positive, though we do see the overhang of the international situation, and we are concerned about it. Every day, what happens in Ukraine could be a calamity for us. We just have to watch it very carefully. The US situation, where they had a month of negative growth, is concerning. But the consensus is that they will break out of that and show positive growth in the next month that they report on. So, you know, I'm not overly optimistic. You know, let's say that I read the signals as they come. I don't guess it. I just look at what is actually being signaled.
Right. But do these projections take into account that very real possibility of a U.S. recession? You mentioned tourism just now, that it has been recovering, and yes, it has been. But, you know, we have the fifth wave of COVID-19, and we have this very real possibility of a recession. So do your projections take that into account?
No, Kalila. If there is a U.S. recession, all bets are off, and we have to go back down to calculated what is likely to happen in the economy. But right now, we don't think the U.S. will enter into a recession. Nobody can be sure, but we don't think so. And we believe that our projections for the Jamaican economy are still on track.
Let me take a couple of questions from our audience now. The first one comes from, let me see who we have here. Let me take one first from George. George Joseph says, Dr. Stokes, and this is the nationwide interview I referred to earlier. Dr. Stokes said, you guys at the BOJ are not indicating the neutral rate. What is that? Did you used to indicate it previously? Why not now? If so, explain what the neutral rate is first, and then respond to that question.
Right. Well, the neutral rate, as I said, is a rate, our policy rate, or actually the rate that banks lend at, that neither encourages growth nor discourages it. It's neutral. Right? But that rate is really an estimate. It's not a precise number. And it is 2.6% plus or minus of what the average 2-year inflation rate is in normal times. So, I mean, let's say that the average inflation rate in the next 2 years is, let's say, 5%. So it's plus minus 2.6% around that 5%.
Okay. Next question comes from Lushand Morris. He says, it will not have any effect if other countries are going through the same issue and you are importing from them, then how would Jamaica fight that?
Yeah, as I said, our exchange rate is very important in fighting that. A good that comes in very expensive and sells at 155 is different to a good that comes in just as expensive but sells at 170 to the dollar. Can I, Khalila, do you follow what's happening in Turkey?
What's
In
happening in
Turkey,
Turkey?
in Turkey, the president, I believe that's what he's called, has instructed the central bank to lower rates. Their inflation is now 70%. Just a little fact I thought persons might want to comment.
70%.
70%.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I don't know, every country in the world who's fighting inflation is raising interest rates. But in Jamaica, we believe we are different. We shouldn't do that. We should keep 0.5%. In that instance, you know what would happen? We'd have a run on the dollar. Every single Jamaican would say, it is useless to save in Jamaican dollars. I'm not getting a good rate. I'm going to buy US dollars, and we would have an exchange rate that is a runaway trade. And that's when we would feel inflation.
Well, let me ask this question from Levar, which is a very common question in this scenario. Levar wants to know what happens when interest rates are too high for consumers to borrow loans. However, inflation keeps going through the roof. What's the next move then?
Yeah, well, I mean, we are very sensitive to making rates too high. We're trying to walk a tight line between not discouraging the continued recovery of the economy and at the same time trying to keep inflation as low as we possibly can. It's a fine line. And I mean, I can't say to you it's an easy choice that we make each month. It's not. There's a lot of debate and there is a lot of concern about the effect that we can have on the economy. Well, let me put it to you this way. Many businesses are borrowing money today from commercial banks at 10%, 11%, 12%. That's barely inflation. You know, at 11.8% of inflation, if you borrow from the bank at 12%, it's basically costing nothing. You know, a businessman borrowing at that price is really costing him nothing, because he can put that onto his commodity and recover that interest cost immediately. So interest rates are really not that punitive out there as yet. And I don't say yet in a threatening way. I say yet in a sense that it is still the same as what inflation is. It's not expensive.
Well, before you go, Governor, I have to ask you about Jamdex, because there was a highly anticipated launch in April. Didn't happen. It was supposed to be April 1. It was pushed back to the end of the month. And last we heard, there were some legal matters that needed to be ironed out. So what's the update with Jamdex?
Okay, so the legal matter really has to do with what the Bank of Jamaica Act says is fiat currency. It says notes on coins. It didn't contemplate that there would be digital currency. So the minister last week, I believe, tabled in the House and it was passed and it's been sent to the Senate. Some adjustments to the Act that would make it recognize digital currency as fiat currency. So that's the legal issue. From Bank of Jamaica's point of view, we are ready. It really is on the commercial bank side. And one in particular, National Commercial Bank, I have to give them big up. They have stepped forward and they have sought to pioneer this product. I'm hoping that in June, we will see it rolled out more largely than it has so far. They have tested it in pilot. It works. They are trying to get their wallet up in tip-top shape to put the currency in it. And I'm hoping that in June it will be launched.
June. So that would mean the legal issues would be sorted out by June, because June is tomorrow.
Yes, I believe the House passed the adjustment to the Act and it's gone to the Senate. I expect that will hopefully pass through the Senate very shortly.
Okay, and so this is something that you all missed.
Something that what? I beg your pardon?
That you all missed. You didn't realize that this change would have had to be made because it was being promoted for April.
You know, mea culpa, I have to say yes. It is something that we picked up late last year and we have been seeking to correct. Correct.
late last year.
Yeah.
So even before you started promoting it for April?
Remember, we ran it in pilot, and we uncovered the fact that it is not in the act late in the year, sometime in December, and we spoke to the minister and asked him to try and get it through. There's a very heavy legislative program, and so we had to kind of join the line. Remember, all these things have to go to the cabinet, and it has to go to LegCom. There's a
Right.
whole process that takes months for even small legislative changes to occur.
Okay, let me take this final comment, and it is from Kemar Stennett, who says, it's an appeal to you, Governor. He says, please mandate the banks to allow principal payment online. It's frustrating joining long lines going into a bank just to do that.
To allow principal payments,
Mm.
what's a principal payment?
For your loan, I suppose.
Oh,
I don't know if it's
well, I
separate.
mean, I have not been in a bank in years. I use my computer and I do all of my banking, and I think every Jamaican can do it. And when you have Jamdex, you will be able to pay everybody, person to person, person to business, instantly without going into the bank.
Pay a loan online too? Pay a loan through Jamdex too?
Of course you can.
Mm.
You can pay anything through Jamdex.
Well, I'm looking forward to that day. Thanks so much for joining us, Governor.
It was a pleasure, Kalila.
Always appreciate having you on. So, to our viewers now, it's time for your poll question. Are you worried about the possibility of a U.S. recession? Are you worried? And if so, how worried are you? A, very worried, because U.S. needs it. That's a bad sneeze. Pachoo! Yeah, if the U.S. sneezes, Jamaica catches a cold. Somewhat worried, but I won't let it stress me. Not really. That won't affect us. And of course, leave a comment, and you can take our poll on both YouTube and Twitter. We now have our poll on Twitter, so you can take that poll on my YouTube channel, the community tab. And later in the program, I'll see what the responses are so far. So, are you worried about the possibility of a U.S. recession? Very worried, somewhat worried, but I won't let it stress me. Not really. That won't affect us. Leave a comment. Up next, we've got your market recap, and the analysts are standing by. And you'll notice a few new things about market recap. We're now including several things: weekly gas price changes, foreign exchange rates, major cryptocurrencies, and info on the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange, as well as major U.S. exchanges. So let us know in the comments what you think of these additions to Market Recap. You like it? Is it too much? Too little? And of course, don't forget to hit that like button on YouTube or Facebook right now.
This segment of Taking Stock was brought to you by Bulwark Insurance Agency. Insurance made easy and...
Download today. Register using your existing NCB online banking login credentials. To open an account or get more info, contact our Wealth Hub today.
Time now for your market recap, brought to you by Scotia Elevate.
Scotia Elevate is a new life insurance plan from Scotia Insurance for the big thinkers and go-getters. Stay protected with up to $12 million in life coverage and up to $6 million in accidental death and dismemberment. Plus, enjoy customized investments to help build your net worth. Learn more at jm.scotiabank.com.
Time now for your market recap. The JSE Combined Index declined last week, falling by nearly 6,000 points or 1.4%. 116 stocks traded across the main and the junior markets for the week ending Friday, May 27, 2022. 20 advanced, 85 declined, and 11 stayed the same. On last week's episode of Taking Stock, the analysts suggested that the sell-off was a result of investors positioning themselves to participate in Dollar Financial's IPO. 106 million shares changed hands on the Jamaican dollar market, valued at $624 million. Wigton Wind Farm was the most traded stock, taking up almost 13% of market volume, with people buying and selling nearly 14 million shares in the company. The stock opened this week at 55 cents. Trans-Jamaican Highway traded the second highest volume. People bought and sold almost 10 million shares in the company. The stock's price lost 13 cents to open the new week at $1.36. And Sagicor Select Funds Financial rounded out the most traded, taking up 7% of market volume, with nearly 8 million shares trading. The stock's price fell by 2 cents to open this week at 48 cents. Now let's see who had the biggest gains for the week. Portland JSX jumped 16% to open this new week at $10.02. Consolidated Bakers is up 8% to open this new week at $1.30. And Kingston Wharves was up nearly 5% to open the new week at $39.99. On the losing side now, ISP Financial Services was last week's biggest loser, down nearly 24% to open Monday at $22.50. JMMB Group 7.25% VRJMD Preferences shares was the second biggest loser, down 19% to close last week at $1.54. And stationery and office supplies was down 18% to close last week at $10.60. But guess what? We're not done. We're introducing new features to our market recap. We've also included a brief breakdown of the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange, the major U.S. indices, gas prices, forex, and cryptocurrencies. On the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange, the composite index advanced last week, gaining 4 points or 0.27%. 26 stocks traded the first-tier market for the week ending Friday, May 27, 2022. 20 advanced, 8 declined, and 6 stayed the same. Massey Holdings was the most traded stock. It opened this week at $5.23 TT. Cinema One was the market's biggest gain, up 32% to open this new week at $2.64 TT. And on the losing side, Trinidad's National Flour Mills fell 8% to open the new week at $1.65 TT. Over in the U.S., the Dow Jones ended last week up nearly 6%. Meanwhile, both the S&P 500 and Nasdaq were also up by 6%. Over at the pumps, you may not have noticed it, but there was a small dip in gas and diesel prices last week. They all fell by 25 cents a litre. In foreign exchange, it took an average $154.89 Jamaican to purchase $1 last week. And on the crypto markets, Bitcoin rose 8% in the past 5 days to end Monday at $31,504, while Ethereum rose 11% in the past 5 days to end Monday's trading at $1,990. This segment of Taking Stock, The Analysts, is brought to you by Jamaica Money Market.
All right, welcome back. I see some early reactions coming in, two completely opposing reactions to the changes to market recap. So Miles says, we welcome the additions and noticed it in the most recent newsletter. But then on the other hand, you have Strong Link who says, too much. We can get most of that elsewhere. We need more information on what we have difficulty getting elsewhere, Cal. So what do you think? I should put a poll up to see, what you guys think. But let me know in the comments, do you like these new additions or not? Is it too much, too little? What else would you like us to include? What would you like us to leave out? Let me know. What side do you fall upon? So it's time now for the analysts, and I'm joined by trader at JMMB, Shauna K. Kelly Reed, a new addition. First, that might be the first time, I think so.
Yes, it is.
K. Welcome, Shauna K, for your first time.
Thank you.
And just bring your laptop forward a little bit for me, please. Yeah, better. All right, we're welcoming back business writer at The Observer, David Rose. And we also have with us financial coach, founder, and CEO of Profit Jump Starter, Keisha Bailey. Welcome, everyone.
Hey.
All right. Always good to have the crew with us, and welcoming Shauna K for the very first time. So our first topic for this evening is, of course, last week's hot topic, which was the Dollar Financial Services IPO. It made junior market history on Friday, receiving a reported $5 billion in subscriptions within just a few hours of opening. According to company representatives, it was the largest raise in the history of the junior market of the Jamaica Stock Exchange. So this is what Oric had to say about it last week before it opened.
Obviously, there will be some short-term upside
within few days after listing. I'm thinking more like a spiritual kind of performance or even better. So
Mm.
let's see.
Well, Paul is saying that based on his application number, this IPO is already oversubscribed. So, Paul,
Based on
already put it
the
in,
calls
get the
that I've
number.
received today, I'll say the same. I've never gotten so many calls since for a junior market IPO since Q3 this year. So I can tell that it's
All right, so that was Oric Angus from Ideal Portfolio Services, one of our analysts last week. So, did you three see this coming? I want to start with you, Shauna, since you're the newbie on the panel this week.
All right, so Kalila, from where I'm sitting, right, I expected this, and let me say, JMB was one of the selling agent, and from my decks, I could see a lot of activities happening where that stock is concerned. I think at the close of the day, when I reached out to other team members to find out what we did in terms of, our clients coming through or JMB money line. And when I heard the volume, I said, wow, if we are one of 3 or 4 selling agents and we got this volume, then definitely this would have been closed as at end of day.
So, what are your anticipations for when this lists in a few days' time?
Well, I expect, all right. So based on the level of oversubscription, I'm seeing where this is going to run. I mean, it's going to hit circuit breaker for a couple of days, but I expect it to run because if the oversubscription is 5 billion and they were only looking 500 million, then it means that, persons are going to want to go out there and get more. And IPOs for a lot of persons mean that they can increase their money in a short period. And for those of us who will hold for the longer term, will even realize more returns than the person who would sell maybe a week or 2 weeks after opening.
All right. Well, let me hear what David thinks about it. You wrote an article for the Observer this week about the dollar IPO. So, what are your thoughts on the dramatic oversubscription?
No, to be honest, it was a surprise for many persons, not just because, well, it's a bit oversubscribed, but to get 10 times in just less than a week, including the holiday, really says a lot. And you had a lot of new investors coming in, it's heard that in terms of, your person's going to JMB's, Holland, New Kingston, Nassau Boulevard, a person's going to St. Lucia Way for Barita, going in to open their accounts. So, you really saw a full-fledged turnout in new investors because even some of my colleagues told me, there are persons who don't invest, but as I'm here with dollar IPO, they're calling to find out to open an account. And it's a good thing because our market is deepening further with more investors, and especially on the younger side. At the same time, it's actually all goes well not just for dollar, but for the overall market with respect to the junior market. Because the reality is, although the main market itself, has some of the quote-unquote stronger companies, the market seems more attractive because of the tax incentive, which is given to the companies for the 10 years, and their growth potential depending on where they are in their life stage. So this is a good thing for dollar. I was talking to somebody and saying that, and they're disagreeing with me in the sense that if the option was there, if dollar could let you some of that extra cash in form of debt, or they could have gone to the market instead and taken up more of that excess capital to be perfect for them, in the sense that they'd have had so much more capital to deploy in the form of loans, because we don't know the amount of capital that recovers, what time frame for dollar. So for example, some companies, $100 million would be 6 months worth of loans. So that's what I'm looking at. But when it comes to listing, it's going to be running pretty fast. And, when persons get their refunds, that money's going to have to find a home. So I still have last week, might get very slowly as persons, look to their cash back home. Or for some person, that's going to hold out on that cash in the interim. But it's I only seen a couple of days, Kalila, because we haven't got the base of allotment as yet. and the JC listing committee still has to meet. So, probably by the third week or the fourth week of June, but, let's look at what Dolla's going to do.
Right. Well, they said that it would be 6 business days after closing.
Yeah.
They'd announce the basis of allotment. So early next week, that would be expected, and then give it another
By June
week,
6th.
maybe 2 weeks before listing. But Keisha, why do you think there was so much interest in this particular IPO? Because there have been quite a few IPOs. Many of them have been oversubscribed, but not to the level that Dollar was.
Yeah, so I think with Dollar, several things worked well in their favor. Building on the successes of prior IPOs was critical, right? So we have a lot of FOMO going on. A lot of these IPOs are sentiment driven. So the fact that the prior IPOs did well only creates more FOMO for new investors saying, I have to get in, this one can't miss me, I'm going in. And that creates natural interest for the IPO. Also, just looking on the financials for Dollar, the numbers are strong, they are solid. My own personal research that I did showed that one of the biggest drivers, the non-performing loans, their levels are really comparable to some of the larger banks in the quality of the loans that they have on their books. So from I saw that, I knew, well, all right, this company numbers are solid. Other analysts would have been looking at it as well, seeing that, and then the allocation, the size of the issue was small. And so because of the interest, you knew it was going to be oversubscribed. Would I expect 10 times oversubscription? No, but that just adds to more gains in once the trading occurs. So that the run-up is what I'm looking for, because depending on the institutional investor interest for long-term portfolios, you are going to see nice price movement in the early days of trading. I'm just curious to see how aggressive that will be. Will it be as intense as Spur Tree, or are we going to continue to break records?
Yeah, the size was small, but 500 is the max for junior market. And it was still bigger than Spur Tree. It was bigger than Edufocal, because they didn't pursue the max and they didn't get 10x over subscription. Right. But like you said, there's been a trend, and that FOMO.
Yeah. And all over social media, it was hot. I mean, your post, you were coming in.
I wonder if my Dollar wine had anything
the
to do
recipe
with it.
is there.
People bought into my Dollar wine and sent.
Yeah, the interest definitely was there. So we knew it was gonna be oversubscribed. I invested in it as well. So hoping to just see what the returns are gonna be like.
Yes, so everybody's now waiting with bated breath for the allocation, but we already know more or less what it's likely to be based on the level of oversubscription.
Yes.
So we have another important thing to talk about this week: interest rates, right? We were talking with the BOJ governor just now, Richard Byles, and I'm sure you all were listening with keen interest to what he had to say about these topics of economic importance. Shauna K, I want to zoom in on interest rates and the stock market. So what impact will rising interest rates have on the Jamaica Stock Exchange? As investors, what should we be looking at right now because of this higher interest rate regime?
All right, Kalila. So what we're seeing right now is that the BOJ would have increased rate by 450 basis points. That's 4.5%. And in some sphere of the world, this might not seem a lot, but we're coming from 0.5, as you said earlier in the show, over a 9-month period. So what this will do is that you will have our corporate investors or realigning their portfolios. So some persons will look to get out of the stock market and now start coming into the fixed income market, because what you have now is that you can get a 30-day BOJ CD at 7%, at 8%, at 8.5%. And when you look at that compared to the main market, for instance, the main market has only grown to about 1% year to date, financial year to date, and calendar year to date, we're looking at about 2%. So, I mean, persons are saying, okay, I can do a little shift now because interest rates are going up. The CDs that used to pay me 0.5, 1%, 2%, I can now get that higher. There's also T-bill as well. The T-bill rates have been moving up, trending up big time. And so, or corporate investors will look at that and say, let me reposition, let me get out of some of these stocks and move into these papers that are yielding me much better returns on a shorter time. But let's not forget, though, that the dollar IPO that just closed last Friday, we saw where that was oversubscribed. So we have to take into consideration that if we have a steady subscription of IPOs or steady set of IPOs coming out, that will help to keep persons in the stock market as opposed to leaving the stock market and chasing better return in the money market. So once we have a consistent flow of IPOs, I expect that most of that money will remain there. But if we don't have that consistent flow of IPOs, I think that our institutional investors will move money from the equity market into these instruments. And as it is right now, you would have been talking about the recession, and persons are saying, a recession is imminent. No, for our institutional investors, they're going to want to lock in some fixed rate and ensure that, even with the recession going on, their portfolio is able to keep at par with inflation or even above inflation. So it's a tricky situation, and we'll just have to see how it plays out, if we'll have more companies coming to market as a result of what Dollar did and building on what the other IPOs did, and see if they can go with that momentum. Because if the market loses momentum, then, funds will leave the market and go into money market instruments.
So the question is, will we have that steady stream of IPOs? Let me ask David, because you always know. What have you been hearing, David?
Well, there are the companies that have said, they're planning to come to market later this year.
What should we be looking out for? Which companies? Who's coming next?
Well, one of those I can recall that, I've said that, they should come to market is, UCC. We're still waiting on Jamaican Tea spin-off Caribbean Dreams. Your Regency Petroleum, which they plan to go public as well. So you have different companies which have expressed they intend to go public. But the thing you have to recall that, until it actually gets stamped off of the FSC with a no objection letter, it can only be called, an intention. So I'm seeing this going around about, the upcoming IPOs. About this need to be skeptical of the reality, which is, although, we want more IPOs, have to just wait and see until the FSC just gives a stamp off and the JC has read the prospectus as well.
Have you heard anything about JPS IPO? Because a lot of people are asking me about it last week. I haven't heard anything recently, any update. Have you?
No, remember that with respect to JPS, they'd have to still go through the two major shareholders, which is the Korean and Japanese power companies. So that's one consideration we don't know about. We know that NTB Capital Markets is the one leading that actual IPO, but the thing is we don't know the progression as yet, because we don't know if JPS was to have hived off part of its operations to be listed on the market, or is the government. So we don't know as yet. So although the government says doing discussions in Parliament at times, we still don't know as yet. So no, NTB is leading it, but we just don't know where along the process they've reached. And things like JPS gives a quarterly update in their quarterly financial statements. So like we can just call JPS and JPS, hey, what's going on? We don't get that update. So we can just watch companies' performance right now in interim and, look at what valuation you think is potentially fair for them to come to market.
I think when JPS does drop, we will have adequate notice, because this would be one that's led by the government, and we've seen their track record with promoting Wigton and with promoting Trans-Jamaican Highway IPO. A lot of publicity will happen when JPS is getting ready for its IPO and when that prospectus finally does drop. So for everybody who's been asking, just be patient. When we know, you will know. Now, David, another thing that has come up. There's been a lot going on with the economy, like we've mentioned, and some member companies of the JMEA, that's the Manufacturers and Exporters Association, have been taking some creative measures to mitigate the impact of higher electricity costs. We also saw in What's Hot in Business that JPS has applied for a 2% increase in electricity costs. And we've all been experiencing higher electricity costs since the start of 2002. You have the war in Ukraine and all of that. And of course, this is impacting electricity prices for manufacturers and so on. So what have you been observing on that front?
So, when I speak to different manufacturers, it depends on their type of operation. So for some manufacturers, the price, fueling, the cost increase of energy manifests not necessarily in just their operating structure, potentially in the distribution structure as well. So companies that actually do their own distribution, they have to be paying, for example, more on the fuel for their trucks. And although diesel is the preferred mode of fuel for them, it's still going up just like everything else. And with respect to, for example, other manufacturers, you're seeing, as I point out, their energy costs going up by probably like 20% or even as high as 12% within the last 6 months or so. And the reality is, it's quite a rough situation because even this week, we saw oil prices were trending at over 119 earlier today. It kind of fell below at down to 115 US per barrel earlier, but at the same time, it's not a good sign because what some manufacturers have to be doing is that they have to actually cut back on production time or try to find every way to be creative and cut back on energy costs. So for some companies, the renewable investments are offsetting some of these additional costs. And for example, you have with Cinco, which said, or actually did back in 2020, that combined LNG plant, and they said just 1 month off of that plant and going back to JPS was like $8 million in just energy costs. So in analyze that comes up to more than 1 billion Jamaican dollars. And I'm just giving an example and the reality that energy costs are going to continue to hamper the growth of the manufacturing sector. And that's why, in the case of Trinidad, that's why the manufacturing center of the Caribbean, because energy costs are so low. Energy costs feed heavily into a manufacturer's decision to expand or what they choose to expand with. And the reason why some of them are so perturbed by the BOJ's interest rate regime is because for them, remember that more manufacturers and even any distribution company has to be purchasing more inventory into the present and actually holding it in order to actually deal with the supply chain disruptions. When loan costs go up, for one, it can deter the investments because when they're negotiating with the bank, it might not be feasible for them to be extending these loan tenures over probably to 10 years and further. That's just the reality. And although some people be like, hey, they can still borrow and get what they want, we've seen where NCB, JN Bank, Sagicor, First Global have all indicated that they're going to be raising rates. With only NCB still able to raise it, but I'm a specific amount. Sagicor is raising rates June 27, maximum 1.5. Jane is raising rates as of next week, Thursday. FGB by next month. And at the Grace County AGM, the managing director for First Global said, they're just renegotiating some loans, extending the 10 years out, so the monthly payments don't change. So at the same time, for the consumer, the payment overall cost of the loan goes up. So it's quite a difficult situation for manufacturers, especially those that are highly energy intensive. But one good thing coming out of this whole situation is that more companies are going to be looking to diversify their energy sources. So if it's going to be LNG, renewables, or you're going to try to find a way to make your operations more efficient, that's just the reality. But to be cutting production and to be trying to see how you can best cut back on any area is not necessarily a good thing for a manufacturing outfit. They have actual capacity then to produce that. And to be producing below that just to say an operation isn't the best situation, especially among rising commodity, fuel, wheat, anything.
Yeah, interesting points and important points, especially if you are in that space. Now, Keisha, we always turn to you to keep us updated on what is going on in the U.S. markets. And
Yeah.
as usual, this has become a common theme over the past few months now. Twitter just stays
Yeah.
in the news. Whenever Elon Musk is involved, whatever he touches will stay in the news. So, but now Twitter shareholders are suing him and
Yeah.
Twitter over their handling of what they call a chaotic acquisition process. It's
Yeah.
still underway, and there've been. Well, let me have you explain it. What's going on with Twitter now?
Right. So the latest in the Twitter saga, or days of our Twitter lives, the latest in that
I love
saga,
that.
the latest in that saga is now that there has been a class action lawsuit from the shareholders against Elon Musk. And essentially, the shareholders are accusing Elon Musk of market manipulation, in that he did not disclose in a timely manner his acquisition of the shares for Twitter before he made his takeover bid public. And also the fact that he has been trying to manipulate the price lower so that he could renegotiate the terms of the purchase. So essentially, that has caused the Twitter price to come down around 12% since the bid was made public. And Tesla shares have also been down 28%. Some of that is market driven, but some of it is driven by, the ongoing saga throughout this acquisition process. But essentially, shareholders are saying, Elon Musk, you are manipulating the market. You're trying to bring the price lower so you pay a smaller amount for these Twitter shares, and you're creating doubt about the likelihood of the transaction towards your best interest so that you can get, the best deal possible. So we'll continue to see how this plays out, see what the next move from Elon Musk could possibly be.
I have always been watching. I've been watching that Elon Musk with some side eye for a while now, because I feel like he does this a lot. He uses Twitter for his own gain, in my opinion, because I saw what he did with Dogecoin and with Bitcoin, right?
Yes.
Played them up, spoke about them a whole lot. And then when Bitcoin took off, many believe he had a large hand in that, in influencing that takeoff. Then he decides that he's out, and now
Yeah.
he's pushing Dogecoin, and then that took off. And I feel like a lot of what he does, we is for his personal gain. I don't have any evidence of that. That's my opinion based on my observation. So
There's
I'm not
a
surprised.
correlation, but we can't say there's a one-to-one causation occurring. We gotta
I'm
say
not
correlation.
surprised that this lawsuit has hit him now.
Huh?
But I'm saying because of that, I'm not surprised that this lawsuit has hit him now.
Yeah. Yes, for sure.
And I can see why Twitter investors would take that position.
Yeah, they're upset. I mean, they've lost a lot of their wealth, right? With how the price has fallen. So I would be upset too. 28%, 12% is no joke, especially in these markets. You've had other holdings as well coming down, so I'd be upset too. But
Well, it's on the flip side, it is short term. So we don't know what's going to happen in the long term, whether his ownership will have a positive effect on Twitter, causing it to grow. So let's see. Another thing we're
just
gonna
have to wait and see.
you are our days of our Twitter lives correspondent now. We will stay tuned to
And
that. Yeah, David.
I was just gonna say, I listened to Richard Byles' point on the whole, the part with respect to the exchange rate, and it's a real concern with respect to, what the BOJ has been having to do to keep the FX rate in control. So we should remember that the BOJ is currently restricting the securities dealers like your NCB, your Cygnus Capital from issuing FX instruments unless they can show that the FX is already here and won't disturb the market. Because the BOJ was basically not active in the market where this BFX it to for the last 2 months. So, it really is showing that, the BOJ is thinking from both angles, because as Richard Byles pointed out, if the FX rate was out past 160 right now, or even higher, the inflation we're feeling right now is probably a lot worse.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is nobody's going to be happy at the end of the day, because we've seen what happened with Sri Lanka. We've seen what's happening with Turkey right now, where Erdogan said, central bank governors bring rates down in a high interest rate environment, or in high inflationary environment. So it's not like easy choice. But at the same time, we need to be careful in terms of in investors. So although Shauna Kay mentioned the potential looking for fixed income, that also considered the downside in the current environment, which is although you might be getting a quote unquote good yield, the reality is the value of your bonds are going to continue to mark down as the interest rates continue to rise. So for those who don't know, when interest rates rise, bond prices go down. When interest rates go down, bond prices interest go down, bond prices go up. And that's when you see that in most companies' financials, Sagicor, Jamaica, NCB, Grace Kennedy, almost every Finnish company you looked at, and look at their other comprehensive income line, you've seen unrealized loss on the bond portfolio. So yeah, some persons will look to, and in that case, other assets that will give them such a high return, but at the same time, it's an easy market to be juggling right now. US market's taking a hit, Jamaican market relatively still stable, but at the same time, eventually institutional investors start to look to other places like for their capital, then it can have an impact on the case of main market offerings or when come to the main market. So it's all in the balance at this point. And crypto's basically falling off a cliff.
All right.
Well, yeah.
Let me probably add some positivity because David, bring on the gloom full force.
I
And
was going
somebody in the
to.
comments was telling me not to be so negative.
Yeah, David.
No, but I'm
Yeah.
I'm being real. Like
Yeah.
I'm not saying that you shouldn't look at the investment class. I'm just pointing out the reality, which is there, which
It
is
is what it is. Keisha, what were you gonna say?
It's always possible to make money in different markets. Up, down, sideways, you can still make money. There are different instruments that are applicable in different market regimes. Yes, interest rates are increasing, but there are investments that you can use now that are profitable with rising interest rates. So you just need to kind of pivot into that. Yes, the items mentioned from David would take a hit, but there are others that stand to potentially benefit as well from this.
Shauna Kay, you wanted to jump in as well?
Yes. So I know David would have said, bonds and interest rate have an inverse relationship. But let's not forget, David, like in our local sector right now, if interest rates increase, for the CDs, and I'm talking CDs and treasury bills, which we will wait until they mature 30 days from now, 90 days from now, 180 days from now. We wait on those to mature. We don't have we won't be losing any cap gains or anything of the sort. So yes, the global bonds that Jamaica has or the local bonds that we have, those will, we lose cap gains on those. For the CDs and the T-bills, which are yielding very nice rates right now, 8% per annum for 30 days. That is some person's car loan payments. 9%. We've not crossed the 10% barrier just yet, but we were very close to that. So, I mean, for some of us who are able to buy into the minimum portion, we can get some money from that, definitely.
And I was gonna make one final point, which is that in the case of your company, your parent company, which is JMB Group, you have some preferences on the market which are variable rate, and some of them are actually yielding 7.9%, and when they get repriced later in January coming, they're going to be around probably 9%. So yeah, you're right, and as Keisha mentioned, you can make money in the market. It's just for you to be aware and see how best can you profit and not take a hit in terms of missing out on further increase in value. So 7.9% for some pref shares right now, and even as the rates at par, if the rate is yield is going to go to, for example, or the rate is going to go to 10% next year, then you're still winning almost at par with inflation.
Yeah.
And you have bonds, for example, that are inflation adjusted. So that's another consideration investors can consider if you're looking to find other fixed income means.
Well, thanks for weighing in to our analyst panel.
Let me
David,
can I add
Keisha,
one more
and
thing, Kalila? For the
quickly,
viewers,
Shauna Kay. Yeah.
we do have VR instruments. So the BOJ issue VR instrument, and the VR instrument is priced at 0.35 plus Watt B, which is the 90-day T-bill, and the 90-day T-bill is at about 7. So imagine you can buy into an instrument, go to your broker, buy into an instrument at 7.35, 7 point, some go up to 2%. So you could get 9% right away. And we do have another rate announcement coming up in June, where based on the inflation numbers, we might see, rates going up a bit. So you can jump into that and get some, can protect your principal basically against inflation, because inflation is almost at 12%. So if you can find a variable rate instrument that is yielding you 12 or close to that, you would have been better off than most persons in the economy who will be just leaving money on the table.
Thanks again, Shauna K. And you know where to find her. She's at JMMB. If you're interested in what she is saying, contact Shauna K. Kelly Reed at JMMB. And just to remind everybody that this is not financial advice. The information here is for educational purposes only. Contact your licensed financial advisor for investment advice specific to your needs and your goals. Even though our analyst panel has various levels of experience and some of them are licensed financial advisors, they are not your financial advisor. So everything that has been mentioned here is in a general sense and for educational purposes only. We're going to take a very quick break and come back with our poll results and a few of your closing comments.
This segment, The Analysts, was brought to you by Jamaica Money Market Brokers.
Hey, moneymakers, you're not an official part of the family until you have your merch. Visit KaliloReynolds.com/store to order your t-shirt and your mask today. Let's get this money. All right, let's take a look at our poll results so far. Let me share my screen and see what you guys are saying over on on YouTube. So on YouTube, we asked the question, are you worried about the possibility of a U.S. recession? 50% of you said you're very worried because if the U.S. sneezes, Jamaica catches a cold. Another 41% said that you are somewhat worried, but you won't let it stress you. So over 90% of you are worried to varying degrees. 5% said not really, that won't affect us. And another 5% chose other. And let's go over to Twitter now. Let's see what Twitter is saying. Is Twitter in agreement with our YouTube viewers? Let us see. All right, over on Twitter, 53.7% said they are very worried. Jamaica next. 36.4% on Twitter said a little worried. No stress though. And just 3% said it won't affect us, and 6% said other. Let me see what some of the responses were. Let me see here. Three responses. I don't see them here. All right. Yeah. So there is consensus. Most of you are concerned, either somewhat concerned or very concerned about the possibility of a U.S. recession. And of course, this is something we'll continue to monitor and to keep you informed about. Let me take some of your final comments. So regarding our new market recap segment, the additions to it, Demar says it can't be too much for me. All right, good. So Demar is in favor of it. Another person in favor, another vote in favor, Fitara says, I love it. Taking stocks, the one-stop shop. Thank you very much, Fitara. Nagash says, I like the new additions to Market Recap. Good. And then Natoya says, scrap the TNT, but keep the US recap. Well, TNT is there for our TNT viewers specifically. If you are interested in Jamaica, of course, then we have it there. But we are getting increasing viewership from Trinidad and Tobago. So want to keep them interested in what's going on their market as well. David says, great addition. Thank you, David. And all right, let's look at some other comments based on the entire range of the conversation today. Cheesy Gully Side says, people look like they're planning on selling all them liver. People look like they're planning on selling all them liver to put on JPS IPO when it drops, because you know that is going to be a massive one when that does indeed come out. Strong link commenting on energy costs and that discussion with David about what manufacturers are doing. Energy costs coupled with increasing interest rates is a real problem for manufacturers. They have to shift to renewable energy sources. Disturbing times. See, it's not me saying it. These are the days of our lives. Let's see. Ingrid talking about the Twitter lawsuit against Elon Musk and Twitter. Ingrid says Elon is doing pump and dump with these stocks. And then Harold commenting on the BOJ discussion. Harold says, instead of keep raising interest rates, how about working with the PSOJ and SMEs to increase exports so we can earn more foreign currency? Not an easy task, but we have to take a step back to go forward. Well, that's not BOJ's role. So yes, there needs to be more work with Jamaica's manufacturers and exporters and so on, but that would not come from BOJ. That would come from JAMPRO and other agencies of the government and so on. Colin said, commenting on Jamdex, Colin says there are only two viable digital currencies, and that's the Chinese digital yuan and the Jamdex. Those are centralized currencies. All other digital currencies are centralized. Should that be decentralized? Okay, I'm not quite sure what the point is that you're making there, Colin. I think there might have been a typo in your comment. All right, so Devon is saying that I need to do a Q&A for the analysts as well. I really wanted to hear the reason for JMB. So I never asked the question, Devon. So ask the question and I ask it to the analysts if I see, because there are a lot of questions and comments that come in the chat. So I try to monitor it as closely as possible and ask those questions to the analysts. If you had a question, type it in the chat and I'll try my best to get that to them. So thanks for joining us yet another week on Taking Stock. It was my pleasure hosting you for this evening. That's our show. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with a friend. Also subscribe to our newsletter at KalilaReynolds.com/newsletter, reminding you that new email subscribers get a copy of my free broker guide. And I think there's something else that I recently put in there. What was it? We have stuff coming up all the time, new documents that we're working on that go out through the newsletter. And turn on those post notifications on YouTube and all platforms so that you can be the first to see when all my videos drop, because we want to help people learn more about money so we can all get this money together. Follow me over on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Kalila Ray, and follow at KRM Biz News, KRM_Biz News on Instagram. If you want to connect with the analysts this week, check the description box below for their contact information. Also visit our website, KalilaReynolds.com, for financial information you can use however you like it, watch, listen, or read. And if you're new to all of this, you're brand new, you're trying to understand IPOs, APOs, what is all this stuff, then you can take my Investing for Beginners Masterclass at KalilaReynolds.com/masterclass. Now, tell a friend about taking stock, because investing is the new sexy. So let's make it cool to talk about money. I'm Kalila Reynolds. See you next time.
Let's get this money.